Derek Johnson, a name respected across boardrooms and business magazines, was not one to flaunt his success. As the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company worth hundreds of millions, he believed in staying grounded. That morning, he decided to stop by a local branch of a prestigious bank to handle a private account matter. It wasn't a big deal, just a simple transaction he preferred to handle in person. He entered the bank, dressed in his usual weekend attire, dark jeans, clean white sneakers, and a gray hoodie. Nothing flashy, nothing to announce his wealth. But as soon as he stepped inside, the atmosphere subtly shifted, conversations lowered, a few heads turned, the receptionist's friendly demeanor faded into cautious curiosity, and the security guard gave him a second glance that lingered too long. He walked up to the front counter where a middle-aged teller greeted him with a strained smile. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, and the judgment was almost palpable. Without asking his name or purpose, she immediately assumed he was in the wrong place. "This branch doesn't usually deal with basic transactions," she said, her tone clipped. "Maybe you meant to visit our location on the other side of town." Derek raised an eyebrow, but remained composed. "Actually, I have business here," he replied calmly. She looked unconvinced, and continued to question whether he had an account, asking for identification before even understanding his needs. To her, he didn't look like someone who belonged in a high-end financial institution. Her assumptions were clear, and Derek had seen this before. Still, he chose not to reveal his identity just yet. He wanted to see how far the stereotypes would take her before the truth came out. The teller, a sharply dressed woman in her late 40s with a clipped tone and forced politeness, glanced at Derek's ID as if it were fake. Her eyes narrowed as she read his name, clearly not recognizing it. Instead of helping him, she began to question the validity of his documents. "Do you have another form of ID? Something more official, maybe a utility bill?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. Her demeanor made it obvious she didn't believe someone like him could hold an account at such a prestigious branch. She assumed, based solely on his appearance, that he lacked the financial background or education to be taken seriously. Derek stood still, suppressing the irritation rising in his chest. He watched as the same teller smiled warmly at a well-dressed white man who had just walked in. No extra questions, no suspicion. The contrast stung, not because he wasn't used to it, but because it still happened despite everything he had achieved. As she continued to treat him like a nuisance, his mind drifted for a moment. He remembered being a teenager walking home from school with worn-out shoes and a backpack filled with dreams. He remembered the sting of being followed around stores, the extra scrutiny at airports, and the countless rejections he'd faced when trying to start his company. But he had pushed through it all. Long nights, doubting investors, learning to code from free libraries when he couldn't afford classes. Each insult, each closed door, had only fueled him more. Now, standing in front of a woman who saw only his hoodie and skin color, Derek realized something hadn't changed. The assumptions were still there, but so was his calm, and this time, he had power she couldn't begin to understand. Derek took a slow breath, keeping his voice even as he asked, "May I speak with your manager, please?" The teller, still convinced she had everything under control, waved off the request with a dismissive smile. "There's really no need for that, sir. I'm quite capable of handling this." Her words were polite on the surface, but her tone dripped with condescension. She believed he was wasting her time, perhaps even trying to cause trouble, and she was determined to maintain control of the situation. Meanwhile, a young banker walking past did a double take when he saw Derek standing at the counter. He whispered to a colleague, who leaned in, glanced at Derek, and widened her eyes in recognition. Within moments, a quiet buzz spread among a few employees. They had seen him before, in magazine articles, online interviews, and a recent Forbes feature where he stood confidently on the cover with the headline, "The Tech Genius Reshaping the Industry." Despite the growing attention, Derek said nothing. He remained patient, letting the teller continue digging herself deeper into her assumptions. She still had no clue who she was speaking to. Finally, the branch manager appeared from the glass office in the back, walking over briskly, after hearing whispers from his staff. His eyes landed on Derek, and his expression immediately shifted from casual curiosity to startled recognition. "Mr. Johnson," he exclaimed, stepping forward and extending a hand. "We had no idea you'd be visiting today. Please forgive the delay. Is there anything I can assist you with personally?" The teller turned pale as her eyes darted between Derek and her manager. Her confident demeanor collapsed in an instant, replaced by the realization that she had just made a terrible mistake. Derek, still calm, gave a small knowing smile. The moment the manager addressed Derek as Mr. Johnson, the teller froze. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face as reality crashed down on her. Her confident posture wilted into awkward stillness. She had just treated a multi-millionaire CEO like an unwanted guest, and now everyone around her knew it. Her voice, once sharp and dismissive, softened instantly. "I didn't realize who you were," she stammered, trying to recover. "I'm so sorry if there was any misunderstanding." The manager, clearly embarrassed, stepped in quickly. "Please accept our sincere apologies, Mr. Johnson. We pride ourselves on professionalism, and this is far from the experience we want for any of our clients, especially one of your standing." His tone was hurried and nervous, his smile apologetic as he tried to contain the growing discomfort in the room. Derek looked at both of them calmly. He wasn't angry, just deeply disappointed. "This isn't about who I am," he said quietly. "It's about how I was treated before you knew. I came here with a simple request, and from the moment I walked in, I was judged." His words weren't raised, but they carried weight. Every person within earshot could feel it. He then reached into his coat pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen a few times. He turned it around, showing a recent article with his photo on the Forbes website, the headline reading, "Derek Johnson, the mind behind one of America's fastest growing tech firms." The teller's eyes flicked to the screen, and then quickly dropped in shame. The silence that followed was heavy. Derek didn't gloat. He didn't have to. The truth spoke louder than anything he could have said. Later that day, Derek received a phone call from the bank's regional director. The voice on the other end was tense but respectful, filled with regret. "Mr. Johnson," he began, "I want to personally apologize on behalf of the entire organization for the way you were treated this morning. That experience does not reflect our values or our standards." He assured Derek that the situation would be reviewed thoroughly, and that measures would be taken to ensure no client, regardless of appearance, would face such treatment again. Within hours, the teller who had misjudged Derek was called into a meeting with HR. While the bank chose not to disclose all the details publicly, it was confirmed that she was formally reprimanded and placed on leave pending further review. The staff was required to attend a mandatory training on implicit bias and customer service standards. Some even speculated she had been let go quietly to avoid further damage. Before leaving the branch that day, Derek was asked if he would be willing to address the staff. He agreed, stepping to the front of the room, where the atmosphere was now hushed and tense. "What happened today isn't new to me," he began. "I've seen it too many times, but each time, it still hurts. Not because of what it says about me, but because of what it reveals about us as a society. We have to stop looking at people and deciding who they are based on how they look. Judging people by appearance is not only wrong, it's dangerous, and it's bad business." The moment was powerful, and someone in the room recorded part of his speech. That clip made its way onto social media, and within hours, it spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up, and Derek's story became a viral lesson in respect, humility, and the consequences of prejudice. Back at his sleek office overlooking the city skyline,
Derek sat with a small group of young professionals, his mentees. They looked up to him, not just for his success, but for his wisdom and calm presence. Word had already reached the team about what happened at the bank, and they were eager to hear his perspective. One of them asked, "Weren't you angry? Didn't you want to call her out on the spot?" Derek leaned back in his chair and shook his head slightly. "Anger is easy," he said. "What's harder is choosing dignity. You don't fight ignorance with more ignorance. You rise above it, not for them, for yourself." His words carried weight, not just from what he'd experienced that day, but from a lifetime of walking through fire without letting it burn away his purpose. He told them that the bank had reached out again, this time with a formal letter and a plan to implement long-term diversity and bias training across all branches. It wouldn't erase what happened, but it was a start. Progress didn't happen in leaps. It happened in conversations, in hard truths, in moments like this that forced people to look inward. One of the younger staff members, clearly inspired, asked how he stayed so composed through it all. Derek smiled and looked around the room. "Because I know who I am, and I don't need anyone's permission to be great." The room fell silent for a moment, everyone reflecting on the strength it took to turn an ugly moment into a teachable one. As Derek stood and walked to the window, he looked out over the city he once felt shut out from, now his own. With a quiet grin, he said, "Let them underestimate you. That's where your real power lies."